one of the things that kind of bugs me or bothers me about the conversation about COVID and like everything is like this idea that we're gonna go back to normal. And I'm like, I don't see us going back to any normalcy of anything. Like, even I think the way companies, have their employees. I mean, Twitter announced that, like, from now on, if you want to work from home, you can work from home indefinitely, even after COVID, is resolved. And it's that kind of thinking of like, it's this moment in time where companies are gonna have to rethink how they do work. Even when we do open up, there's companies that are gonna have to, like, offices that are gonna have to figure out how do they social distance their employees.
Mine.
Mm-hmm.
Mine.
Mine too.
Mine. Yeah.
I'm like, I'm sorry, like, think of all the offices that went open concept, like full on open concept. The person is like right next to you and you work, like, that is no longer.
That came up because companies must have been real cheap and didn't want to put people in offices. I don't know the background of open concepts, but it sounds cheap. And I know a lot of companies like to be cheap.
That is true. I mean, I think that's the thinking. Like, you save money by not having offices. You have this open floor concept and like all these things. But now it's the reversal. Now you have to invest more money in putting up like shields and like making sure that, break rooms aren't going to be a thing. I'm sorry. I don't want to be breathing in anybody else's air. Like, I don't even want to be in an office breathing other people's air.
This all sounds like have you heard of the show or the series Black Mirror? It's on Netflix.
Yes.
This whole COVID thing is like a Black Mirror episode, or a whole series. This is what it is. It's like,
yes,
it is. It's kind of like the X-Files / Black Mirror-ish.
Yes.
It's just because I was over here talking about going back to normal too, like with restaurants, but I don't think there is a normal in a sense, or at least one that I can't foresee right now. Will we all be celebrating Susie's 40th birthday together in a restaurant downtown Chicago? I don't know.
I mean, it's that thing you think. I mean, it's just so crazy, like, just to think about going back into spaces and like the trauma that we all have sort of experienced, and this idea of like, I just don't want to shake anybody's hand. I don't want to hug anybody.
That's so weird for me because I will say, since I've been up here, as I've said, and I will say many times throughout our series, I'm born and raised in the South. I'm born and bred in Mississippi, and I'm proud of it. And it's weird not being able to hug people or shake people's hand. Although up here, I guess because in the South, we're known for our hospitality, also racism. But when I came here to the Midwest, people are like, oh, it's that Midwest charm. And I'm like, I never quite saw that because I'm from the South. I know what real hospitality is. And up here, I still don't quite get that whole Midwest charm thing. But it's still weird to me
that here in Chicago, and some people say that Chicago doesn't fall into the normal Midwest.
It doesn't. It doesn't. But
Midwest charm.
I have friends that I went to graduate school with who moved here from California, and they say that they can feel the difference, but they're coming from California, like San Diego and LA, and it's different. Like, we ain't hugging up on people there. But here it's a little different. But I think for me, it's always been like, where Midwest charm? Where is it? Girl, bye. But anyway, I got to a point where I noticed myself, like when I would meet people, I would like to give them hugs but then I'm like, oh, I can't. But now I can't do that because it's like, we just can't give people hugs. And I had someone, as my organization is working with another organization in Little Village to get some masks for our community of people that I work with, and they dropped the masks off in my house last week, and they were so nice. And we were like, we wanted to hug and shake hands, and we couldn't do it. And it was just weird, It was like, oh, I don't know. It was just so weird.
I think it comes to something. I think I grew up obviously in a Mexican household and
Yeah.
a Mexican family and a lot of like Latinx, individuals. And the main thing is you go anywhere, you get to a party, you get to church or wherever, you're gonna say hi to everybody, and you're gonna either shake their hands and hug them and kiss them. Like it's a three thing. You gotta shake hands, you gotta hug, and then you're gonna kiss. Like that's the order. Like, and you're gonna to everybody. You can't miss somebody because then the tia's gonna say something to your mom. Like, oh, what's wrong with her? Is she, what you do to her? Like, why is she saying hi to me? Like, it's always gonna be something.
Yep.
So, and I think there is that component, I think, of that culturally, like, it's hard, like, to not be able to, like, you see someone and my first instinct is like, oh, I'm gonna lean in to hug, and it's like, but it's, for me now, there's a little pause now, and I'm like, oh, like, even, like, my own family members were just like, ooh, like, I don't know, like, I'm like, maybe not. It was so funny because when my sister stopped by, she actually stopped by earlier today, and she's like, I just want to come in and hug you all because my parents live with me, and then they're like, and I'm like, no, you can't come in. She's like, she had to get tested for COVID.
Yeah, you told me.
And she's like, I got tested. I was like, that was like a week ago. You could have been exposed during that week.
It's so funny you said that because a good friend of mine, she got tested maybe like a month ago or so, and she's driving home to Kentucky to see her family, and because she also just she's getting ready to graduate from grad school, and she hasn't seen them. Like most people, she's close to her family. I'm like, girl, you crazy. I love my mom and dad, but I ain't trying to go see them right now. No. I'll talk to them. I see you like this. No, we good.
Yeah.
She wants to go do it, so more power to her, but she wants to get tested before she goes again. And she was like, it's amazing how much time, even though it's been a month, she's just like, I want to get tested again. So she asked me, because I work in the realm of like, what are some free testing sites? And, I sent them over to her, but she was just like, man, I just got tested a month ago. But like going back to what you said about your sister, so much can happen, even within 24 hours.
Yes. Like, even when you're that waiting period, I mean, it's like a 2-3 day waiting period in some places to be able to let you know. And I think that's, what you and I have talked about, like, in order to be safe, like, there has to be a quicker way to know if you have it or not, before we have this vaccine. But I think, that's the only way. Like, that's the only way I would feel comfortable, like, being in a space with someone else, is if I knew that the both of us got tested just a minute ago and we're good. Like, we're good. Like, we can be in each other's space. I'll be worried about it. But who knows if we'll even get there, like, in a reliable way. Like, I think there's...
Go ahead, finish. Go finish.
No, I was gonna say, like, I think people want to create these tests and, like, have these rapid kind of results. But then you have all these, like, things of, like, well, we don't know if it's reliable. We don't really know if it's, like, if the data is correct. Like, all these things, and it's like, well, that's not helpful if people aren't agreeing if it's reliable or not.
And, I've been on some of these weekly phone calls around COVID, and some of them are starting to talk about people are getting letters that they have to start going back to work. But in order to go back to work, they have to get tested. But as we know, testing is still not being done at the amount that it should be. So capacity is still low, just for a number of different reasons. And so one thing on one of these calls is talking about how to better assist people who are unfortunately have to start going back to work now. And they have to have these letters saying that they've gotten tested and that they do not have COVID. When we just don't have the resources they basically were saying we don't have enough resources to be able to test all these people who are getting these return to work letters.
Yeah. And that's the dilemma. That's the thing. Like, we have president who keeps saying, let's open, let's go back, let's do this and that and that. And you have, his, other supporters saying, like, yeah, open up and let's do this. But there's no safe way. Like, there's no plan. Like, and then he went off and was like, oh,
They're trying to have plans, but there's no timeline, so it's hard to plan for something when you don't have a timeline.
Or you don't even have the resources to like.
You don't have to have that.
You know, and it just makes me so mad to like have to like think through this and like, yeah, like I will acknowledge my privilege of having a job and being able to work from home. Like I will acknowledge that and I know it. But I would think that if I didn't have a way, you know, if I couldn't work from home, like I would hope that I'd put my health and other people's health above it and be like, okay, I'll just have to figure out how to, you know, get by and do this and or all these things. It's tough though, like when you hear the stories or you read stories about what people are going through, you know, you definitely, it makes you pause and think of like, yeah, like maybe we should just open the economy and like do all these things. But then you're like, but is the costs of it worth it? You know, is the risk worth it?
And that's kind of because I'm like, so people that are talking about opening back up, because I may just be too far on the healthcare side, but what like from the, I guess the economical standpoint, like I get it, we all know we got to open or we're not gonna have any money. Okay, blah blah blah. But people are still dying. We still don't have enough tests. People are not being tested enough. We don't have the resources for that. So how would we explain people being able to open back up and go to a bar? Like, how do you explain that? Like, what's the explanation for that? Like, that's something you don't have to do. But I understand, like, people who are bartenders who own that establishment. They're like, well, that's my livelihood. But then how are you going to take your livelihood with people who are still dying? Like, what do we do?
I think it's even like vice versa. Those companies that are continuing, like, you know, meat packing plants and every other kind of factory or manufacturing company that continues to kind of be essential is working, you know, and they have workers, and you hear, you know, here in Chicago, you know, the El Milagro Tortilleria had to close because they had, you know, cases of COVID, you know, and the impact that had on people that were working there, and then you think of like the health impact it had on the people, right? People that passed away, unfortunately, but also those that took it back home and it just spread, you know, because there was no plan to say, we need to shut down completely, you know, and we need to figure this out, you know, in a safe, humane, financially well planned out way, you know, and that comes from the top down, you know, like if our federal government couldn't be bothered to figure out a plan when they knew months in advance of what was coming, you know, and have this information, whether they want to acknowledge it or not, that's on them, but we all have seen news stories and everything of like what was known months in advance before the initial shutdown was kind of talked about. Like that's the problem. Like you don't have a federal kind of plan to say, hey, this is what we're going to do, but we're going to support our people of the United States of America and be able to support you for the next 30 days that we have planned to shut down, and this is how we're going to do it. Your, you know, basic income or however the plan would have been. But it's unfortunate because then you lay the weight on the states, and some states don't have the financial infrastructure to be able to support their state, you know, individuals. Like they don't have that money or anything because, you know, like Illinois, not the best budget in the country.
Cut. Like all things fail. Also,
you know, like,
abort.
You know, but it's that thing where, you know, because your federal leaders don't want to take claim of any issues, or they just want to wash their hands of anything and be like, no, you know, let's just let the states do it now. They have the autonomy and they can do it. And it's like, can we though? Can we really?
That's I need to grab my charge in a bit, but that's the Republican way, and they're the ones in power. That's what they do. To like the whole 1200 that, you know, we haven't even talked about that 1200 that don't do nothing. That's a drop in the bucket. For people that live in major urban areas, $1,200, that might be your rent. One of my friends did tell me that. She said that was her rent. The 12, she said that was almost a whole month's rent, and she had a little bit left over for the other month for her rent. Like, that's it. And when that first stimulus package came out, I mean, I think like most people who are suffering right now, most of it went to corporations. I just don't appreciate that. Almost none of it went to the concerns of people. But that's, again, is the Republican ideology. That's what they think. It's their whole, take care of it yourself. We like 1,200's enough. Oh my God. And even though I know there's some talk about getting another bill passed, to maybe get 200 a month or 2,000 a month, whatever it is.
2,000. There's a few out there that keep floating around.
There's a few out there. And I think really for like the different industries that we're talking about, for people who have lost their job because they do work in a restaurant or they work in a factory, like those groups of people need to be prioritized. It's not their fault. They didn't know that a pandemic was going to come and close down their business. I mean, I get it. Corporations didn't know that either, but they're able to sustain themselves a little bit longer than these other groups of people. And I'm just like,
and they got a bailout at the last recession.
Always get bailed out. Corporations always get bailed out.
Always. They got a bailout. They didn't have to pay it back, and like, it's mind-boggling to kind of think of, when you think of like that first stimulus package and how quickly the small business loans were. It was just like fingers slammed and it was gone, money gone. And then you hear of like these like large chain restaurants that got like all this bunch of money. I'm like, no, you can survive.
Right.
Like, you give it, like, I don't remember who it was, but somebody gave back the money because they were like, oh, we didn't know or whatever. And they gave the money back. But I'm like, why would you apply in the first place? Like, you're not suffering. You have the infrastructure and the financial means to be able to withstand this far longer than actual small business, that's down the block here that needs it to be able to survive this pandemic.
I'll never understand why we give that sort of money to corporations. Anybody can say what they want to say, how they want to say it, when they want to say it. They can argue with me. I'm never going to understand it. Oh, our economics to do. I just don't. I don't, because we care more about money than we do about, I won't say I do. They care more about money than they do about people. And that's real fucked up.
But, and I think that, I mean, unfortunately, when you kind of look back and just in history and time, like, that's like the American way. Like, that's
capitalism, baby.
And that's just like, and that's how it is, and that's how it should be. And any form of anything else is just bad, and forbid that it comes from any person of color making any kind of suggestion, because then it's just like,
than anyone that's different than a white male, anybody.
And it's like, oh no, they just they're eroding our American values. They're going against what we stand for, and it's like, no, because if you really read the Constitution, there's a lot of things that you all are doing that don't stand into what these Constitution, all these things that y'all, our founding fathers did, and that could be a whole other conversation.
That is a whole other conversation, but we can go there somewhat right now, but those are my founding fathers. When they had the first July 4th, my people were in chains. So we weren't celebrating that. So they're not my founding fathers. I don't go with that.
And I think that's the struggle, right? Like, that's the biggest thing of, when you think about disparities. I think we didn't get to touch on that a lot, but I think when you think about disparities and why we're seeing them in the forefront, not that they never existed, not that they, like this whole conversation, like, oh my gosh, COVID-19 has caused all these. I'm like, no, they've always been there. They are there, whether it's health, structural, all these disparities that we're seeing are there, is because, there's a design issue. Like this was how it was designed, you know, and even the idea of like all men are created equal, you know, people see men and they only really think white males.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, man, it really should just say all people are created equal. Like,
honestly,
that's really
that's it. It really should, because the things people supposedly are fighting for now, that's related to the Constitution and the Bill of Rights from hundreds of years ago, the United States was in a totally different mindset. We had just broken from another country, and those laws were much more applicable. We look at where we are now in the 21st century in 2020, most of these things don't even apply. But people stand behind them, honey, like it's their grandmother. Like, this don't even make sense anymore. Like, what are we doing? I mean, like you said, that's a whole different issue, talking about Constitution and like things of that nature. But I mean, it is like these things are not even just applicable, and people are trying to make them be applicable. I mean, don't get me wrong. Now, the First Amendment, you know, that one is very much applicable, and of course a few others. But you know, this whole thing, right to bear arms, honey, who are you trying to protect?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm from the South. Like, my grandfather had guns. You know, that's just, you know, and people think it's always white people that have the guns. But black people have guns too.
Yeah.
You know? But, you know, the ideology behind that was totally different. But, you know, but it's just like, it's just, it's the whole thing.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, like when you think about that Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, like, I think you have a right to defend yourself if, you know, and protect yourself and in a situation that deems it. But I don't think you should have access to military grade weaponry. Like, that's where I'm like, why do you need that when you live in suburban area X and like, who's coming at you?
Right. Who's coming for you?
Like, what country's gonna come invade you?
Like, why are they coming for you? Like, what are you doing? Why are they coming for you?
You need military grade weaponry to protect yourself. Like, if you need to protect yourself because there's a robber coming, a burglar coming to your home, you know, okay, that I can see.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, but I'm like, when it comes to like when you hear. And most of these incidents that you hear are with military grade weaponry. And I'm like, that should not be, I shouldn't have access to it. No, like, I should not.
No, you shouldn't have access to it.
I am not in the military, and I'm not on active duty. I should not have access to it. Like, just no. That is my opinion on that.
That's your soapbox.
That's
I really talked, I think, about the health disparities of like COVID, and I think especially here in Chicago, I will say, you know, when I first moved here, don't get me wrong, I love Chicago. I think it's great. Will I spend the rest of my life here? I don't know. But for now, it's where I'm at. But I think I didn't realize moving here, when I moved here for grad school, had not visited the school I attended, I hadn't even visited Chicago. I just wanted to get out the South. So I was like, this is my time. I got accepted. I'm doing it. Honey, I did not realize it's the most segregated city in the United States, still to this day. And it's been a few years since I was in grad school. And I'm just like, wow, Chicago want to be so diverse. But nobody lives or nobody eat, plays, work outside of that community. I hate those. I really hate that. Eat, play, work. I really do.
But you know, it's a poppin' word.
Oh my God, phrase. It's a popular little phrase. But people's like, oh, we're so diverse. Yeah, within your neighborhood. Do you leave your neighborhood and go talk to the 2 neighborhoods down? Like, what? And it just still amazes me to this day. I mean, but that's how the city was set up. As I've done a lot of research since I've been here, because as you know, a lot of people know, listeners and whatnot, a lot of people from Mississippi migrated to the south and west side of Chicago. Yeah. And so it's a lot of my histories here too, which is very fascinating to me. And so, you know, we have gentrification and we have redlining and, you know, we have white flight. And a lot of the white flight, all those kids out there starting to come back into the city. So it's a lot of history here in Chicago where discrimination was intentionally set up. And I think that's one thing people, when they look at the South, they think that, oh, racism is there. Yes, it is, but it's also here in Chicago too. I don't think people necessarily want to call it racism, or they're like, oh, we're not racist. Oh, I voted for Obama. Okay, but what? Like, what's that have to do with anything? I think, I mean, what does it have to do with anything? So I'm just like, I think one thing I always say when people ask me, oh, how is it being out of the South and not being in Mississippi and Louisiana where I resided? And I was like, well, at least in the South, I know who I'm dealing with. I know who's racist. I know who to I know who to stay away from. Here in Chicago, you never know. Because people swear up and down they're not racist. And I'm like, and I'm listening to you and seeing your actions. Yeah, you got some racist tendencies.
And even people within your own race, within your own community, and you're like wait, that doesn't
too. Yep.
Maybe you shouldn't say something like that in front of people.
Yeah.
But I think, you're right. I think, so born and raised in Chicago, as I mentioned in our intro video that we did, I didn't realize how segregated Chicago was, probably until maybe late into maybe my senior year of high school, definitely going into college and really kind of stepping out of my community, because my community was where I just did, and maybe I'd go out to a suburb here and there, and maybe go downtown. But outside, it was grew up for me, it was in this bubble of I'm not really hey, I was safe in my little Latino bubble of where my life resided, and they had this sort of experience in my community where I'm at and these things. But as I got more into the social justice of things, into the nonprofit realm, and really getting to know Chicago through that lens, and really kind of understanding the history of Chicago and how the design of Chicago came to be, and just our neighborhoods, and when you hear things the South Side or the West Side, or things like Englewood or Austin, and the connotations and the pictures that come to your mind when you kind of hear that as a Chicagoan, it definitely made me realize man, we are definitely a segregated city, and if you grew up in a certain neighborhood, that's all you know.
Yep.
That is your bubble, that is what you know, and unless you're exposed in other ways, you're not going to really understand or see these other perspectives. I've been fortunate enough to be able to see other perspectives and kind of gain some other insight and be okay, I can open up my mind and sort of understand more. And I think, and it's unfortunate that, our education system isn't set up in a way to actually know real history, for your own history. Now as an adult, I have to go and read these books, and find out what, my history was for my people, and all this Native American history, and how that's all kind of interrelated. But it is you, and to grow up not knowing I think what racism really looked like because of your bubble and what you kind of came to know. But once you figure it out, and then you're oh, those things that what my teacher said to me, that was pretty racist, or that was some real microaggressions that I got growing up.
Oh girl, the microaggressions are real.
And it's but because you didn't know any better, because it wasn't something, and especially being a child of immigrants, what are they going to pass down to me as they're kind of learning this whole new culture and this whole new way of living and this whole new way of ideals and all these things, and they're bringing a culture that's completely different from the one that's a culture that's the United States, whatever that may be. It's just man, but now as an adult, I'm man, when my teacher said that she was not complimenting that I spoke English very well.
You got that? Oh
yeah. Oh, I had to, say things like that growing up. And it was just this thing of but like I said, I didn't know.
You didn't know. But now you know. You
But now I'm but now when somebody tells me, I'm what do you mean?
What do you mean?
How should I be speaking it? And I think, I mean, it definitely is that, but I think there's like the racism that just, it's blanket, when you think of it. And then there's the racism between minorities in Chicago, and this idea. And I think even within like the same minorities and the sort of like, when you think, well, I always think about the South and the West Side, and I hear conversations over and over again of like, well, the West Side gets all the attention, they get all the resources. Or you hear things like, well, the South Side's always getting the attention, all the money and all the resources. Or like X organization is getting all the attention, they're doing everything. And it's like, when are we going to figure out that we need to work together is so much easier and better than trying to work against each other?
Because kind of like you always say, there's enough for everybody. There's enough. And if there's not enough, then you need to question, why do people feel that they're not enough? Where's that coming from? But there's enough. There's enough for everybody to make it and to sustain it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's like, there is definitely enough resources, and there's even more collective power that I think people don't realize, especially as a place like Chicago, where, if our communities really came together and demanded things from our elected officials in a collective way, I think that would go far more better than anything else, than having, these kind of divided and conquer kind of scenarios that we see. And I think there's groups out there that are trying to, but it's hard. It's hard when you're going to.
If anybody who's listening, if you have ideas, put that in the comments, because that is really, Lisette and I spend so much time talking about the Black and brown relations. So, I mean, we're going to get into it more so, but if you, any suggestions, put that in the comments, because that is something that really plagues both of us. Why are we not working more together? Let's work more together. Yes.
And I mean, part of it, like we've touched on it and said, the design of it, and I think even the design on a national level is there to sort of, so like, I mean, when you think about, the undocumented kind of conversation and the idea that, well, they're coming here and taking our jobs, and I'm like, well, what job?
You say that. I hate
like what jobs? I mean, these are, and you see now more because of COVID, you see the essential worker being at the farms and picking strawberries and all these things. And I'm like, those are the jobs.
And people say they come and taking our jobs. They're jobs you don't even want. What do you think? I mean, I won't say you, but people think they're, I'm too good for that job. But then someone who comes over here who's hardworking, trying to support their family here and probably back home, and they're taking your job that you think you're too good for. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I've heard, like, I mean, because of the power of places like TikTok, I've come across some farmers who just say, like, who have said, like, these are people that come and are spending grueling hours, picking these things, helping them do these things. And they're like, if you try to find someone that was born and raised in the United States to come and do this, they may do it for a few hours and then they'll quit. And I'm like, because it's hard work.
Yep.
I thought about, like, if I'd be in a position where I had to take that job, I'll probably, I don't know if I'll make it. Like, I don't know if I'll survive.
You and me both.
Because I'm like, I honestly don't, and I appreciate those that are doing it, those that continue to do it, because I'm like, it's hard work, and it's like, I'm like, so don't come, I mean, they're not, at least they're not coming from, I mean, they're not taking my job. Like, I don't know what jobs y'all are talking about, but they're not doing that.
What job are you talking about?
I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. They leave it so, like,
it's so
job.
Yeah, what are you, jobs? Just go ahead and call it, but it's racism, it's prejudice.
Yeah.
You just don't want someone who looks different from you to be in your country. That's what it is. Yeah. That's all it is. And we all know that fear turns into hatred.
Yes. I mean, we've seen it. We've seen it the last 4 years.
Yeah.
You know, and we see it recently in the news, and we see all these things of just like this hatred that definitely is. I mean, when you think about Black men and you think about, Black women and just, even Native Americans during COVID-19, like that's a whole other episode for us that, we do want to definitely address and give its own platform when it comes to Native Americans and the indigenous population.
I'm gonna back up for a place. So when we say, I don't know who came up with the word indigenous as it refers to Native Americans. Is that a word that they coined for themselves, or is that some professor out of some university somewhere?
I don't know. I think that's what our conversation.
Okay, that's why. Okay, because I'm like, is that what they prefer to be called? Even when we start talking about people from other countries who are indigenous, who decided that? I just want to make sure that I'm referring to it, because I want to refer to people how they want to be referred to.
I know. And I don't know the answer. I wish I did.
Yeah.
That's why I use both. I was trying to be safer.
I know.
I mean, and this is it, guys. Like, we're just gonna be real about what we know and don't know. Like, we don't know everything. This is just us having our conversation.
Yeah, like this is what we do on the phone for 3 or 4 hours. We can, I think probably 3 is what make 3.5. We just talk. And so we were like, let's just do something about it. Let's just talk about our perspectives, whatever. So thanks for tuning in, guys. We talk a lot, yes. But if you want to hear more, Lisette's going to tell you how to subscribe.
Yeah, so you can subscribe to our channels. You can click, if you're on YouTube, you can click on the subscribe button. So please do that. If you're looking at some of our other social media, we'll definitely link it into our IG or TikTok bios and be able to do that. So we'll definitely have those links there for you to join us next time. Bye.